Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950, Voice of Progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you today. There is so much going on all the time, particularly now. Boy, are we in a time of change, not just post election 2024, but the selections that President-elect Trump has made for his cabinet. They're not traditional selections. Indeed, they are disruptors, if you will. And many of us have wanted change, and sometimes this might be the change you want. This might not be the change you want. I don't know. But let's look at Matt Gaetz today, the former congressman, at least as of last week, who is up to become the U.S. Attorney General. He had been under investigation, and the Department of Justice said, "Well, we're not going to pursue this any further." Why? We don't know, but that is apparently they did not find the charges uh, that rose to the level of him needing to be prosecuted. So you tell me what you think, particularly as we in this society say that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But we also know that the powerful tend to have an edge on things, right? So I want you to reach out to me in the DM. Well, not in the DM, in the messages, and let me know what you think. Because the Ethics Committee so far has said we're not going to release the report. The Department of Justice has absolved him, and so let's wash our hands of this. But do you think that the American people need to know? Do they need to know the report from the Department of Justice? Because there are reports that have absolved him and that put him squarely in the, or should I say, firmly in the circle of the specter of guilt. Should we not hear it all so that we can make the right decisions? I want you to reach out and let me know what you thought. Hey, Mark, how you doing? Mike, excuse me. I'm not wearing my glasses, but I want to know what your thoughts are. Please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. I'm also at Santita J on X. And I want to hear from you. Please, everybody, like and share the show. Of course, we've got The Revolt of the Rich, the author of that magnificent book. Please get it on Amazon. It's the holiday season. It will be a wonderful gift for your family. If you want to find out how we got to where we are in the just in the wave of really granting Americans more and more rights and more leverage in this society. Well, there was a pushback in the 70s after the push through of the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, the revolt of the rich. And you see them really, um, you see them in the Democratic and Republican parties. They're running the place, right? But let's talk about Matt Gaetz, who is part of the rich, if you will. His father, who's a prominent lawmaker in Florida, also sold his company for $500 million. No one talks about that. They just say that his father was a prominent lawmaker, and it sounds nice and humble enough. But uh, Dr. David Gibbs, historian from the University of Arizona, um, he's not someone who is certainly of inconsequence financially. He's someone who's very wealthy, someone who's very powerful from a powerful and influential family. But that having been said, there's a lot of controversy around his nomination. Let's step back and you tell me who former Representative Matt Gaetz is.
Um, all right, he's obviously a very well-known and controversial figure in the Republican Party. Like pretty much everybody in the Trump entourage, he has significant connections to great wealth and corporate power. Despite the populist image enjoyed by Trump and by Gaetz himself, you're quite right, basically noting his family background firmly cemented him into the power sections of the Republican Party, including the corporate power sections. So to some extent, the image of him as a populist, at the very least, compromised to some degree. On the other hand, he's taken a lot of heterodox positions. He does seem to have a positive record on things like antitrust policy. And he has stood up for, as far as I can tell, fairly consistently for freedom of expression and against efforts to censor the internet, something I feel strongly about. He has a very mixed record. He does have a lot of sort of creepy far-right associations. I'll say I don't like to make partisan comments, but I personally would not vote for him. And he's become a sort of thorn in the side of the Republican establishment, kind of a Trumpian disruptor. That's how he's presented himself. And I think that's, to some extent, the reality. He represents a particular faction of the Republican Party. He helped to unseat the previous speaker, Kevin McCarthy. He went out of his way to do that, alienating many Republicans and obviously many Democrats. He's widely admired in some circles and widely hated in others. I think that's a fair statement. Like so many people in the Trump entourage. And there clearly has been an effort to scandal monger him. There has been an effort to, play up allegations of things like sex trafficking. They've been investigated by the Justice Department. As far as I could tell, they didn't find anything sufficiently credible that they would indict. And so who knows what the story is with his background. There has also been an investigation by the House Ethics Committee, which was done in private, involving things like alleged sex with an underage girl, which obviously is disturbing if true, again, if true, misuse of campaign contributions and other alleged, I emphasize alleged improprieties. What I find disturbing here is this was done in secret, and now there's an effort to suppress the final report. Irrespective of the context and irrespective of whether Gates is guilty or innocent of any of the charges against him, there is no justification, in my view, for withholding this report from the public. The public, as in all circumstances, I think has a right to know the facts. And I don't really see any legitimate case for withholding the document here.
Well, why are they withholding the documents? Because quite frankly, they can do anything they want to do. They change their own rules all the time. Congress really rules over themselves. Why are they withholding? And they protect themselves. No, they don't protect everybody. They protect certain people. Let's be very clear. They don't protect everybody. They don't protect populists. You could have agreed or disagreed with, you remember Congressman Jim Traficant, who was, to me, a dyed-in-the-wool populist. He was not protected at all. And it seems to me that populists are not protected. It is the oligarchs who have who get the covering. And and I also want to be mindful of the fact that you are innocent until proven guilty. And if the Department of Justice chose not to pursue charges against him, okay. Although I know that's selective too. I mean, you know what? There's just so much mistrust in this whole process because we know it's not fair. That's the thing. Because Dr. Gibbs, I don't want to be guilty of leveling accusations at people. And I was listening to the news this morning, and I was listening to some talk radio, and I was listening to Washington Journal on C-SPAN, which I'm quite a big fan of, because I like the fact that they open up the phone lines for the first hour and they just let independents, Democrats, and Republicans speak. So you hear an unfiltered view of what people are thinking, not view of what you hear, what people are thinking. Let me get my metaphors together. You hear what people are thinking. And this is really falling on partisan lines. Whether to release the report, not to release the report. You need to let Trump have his way. Other people are saying, pin him up against the wall. I mean, where are we in all of this? Because this would be the top cop in the United States.
That's right. Obviously, as Attorney General, he would be responsible for enforcing the law at the federal level. And obviously, somebody with a record that is unclean is disturbing. I suppose for me, I agree completely with you that we need to have a standard of innocent until proven guilty. And so far, they haven't proven anything criminal about Matt Gaetz. On the other hand, it is disturbing that they're not releasing the report. I can't see any justification for not releasing the report. So on those grounds alone, I think there are real questions to be asked here about Gaetz's fitness for the job if they won't release the report. But it is complicated. And there's no trust at all, it must be said, no trust in process, because there's an image and probably a reality that both sides here are willing to use anything they can. They're willing to use the legal system for political purposes to attack
Mhm.
their enemies. This has been done against Trump, it must be said.
Mhm.
Some of the charges against Trump were clearly valid, or at least valid enough to take to court, like the ones in Georgia. Others seem to me very contrived. For example,
Mhm.
the ones he was convicted of, basically paying off a woman he'd had sex with. It just doesn't seem like something worth bringing to court.
Oh,
Uh,
even the case in New York. I mean, the bank said we're actually good. I do business with him go again.
mm,
He paid us, and I just don't. And then when I look at real estate, we're seeing that it's subjective. It depends upon who's assessing your property. And I'm not making excuses for him. Everybody, it's fairness to me is the key.
I agree. I agree. You have to have process. Again, I've mentioned this in the show before, but I'll mention it again. I'm old enough to remember the Nixon impeachment. And that was very different in the sense that that was done in an atmosphere of restraint and dignity. The Democrats, when they brought charges against Nixon, they did it in a legalistic and restrained way. They seemed to refrain from any really significant partisan showcasing. And on basis of that, they persuaded both the public and a large part of the Republican Party that Nixon had to go, based on the fact that he'd broken the law. And I think it went down in history, I think rightly, as a fair judgment of Nixon. This is completely different what's been going on here. And it just seems like the Democrats are randomly finding anything they can to throw at the Republicans, some legitimate, some not. And that undermines confidence in the whole process. And people would rightly be skeptical of some of the charges against Gates just because the Democrats are so obviously motivated by politics, not by impartial justice. And so, on the one hand, you have that. On the other hand, the Republicans are not releasing the report, and that is disturbing, I will grant. So, I can see cases on both sides here.
Well, I can see cases on both sides, but I see so much poison in the water, and that means no one is safe. And
Right.
we're going to have a lot of back and forthism, if you will. Once the Democrats are in power, they're going to go after the Republicans. Once the Republicans are in power, they're going to go after the Democrats. And for me, um, I don't know. Kaylin, you say you believe that the charges are being dropped out of fear and exhaustion. By the way, you might remember me from, oh, hey, how you doing, sweetie? How are you? It's good to see you. I think I think that the charges being dropped. Kaylin, you never know. You never know why they're dropping these charges, and I think the fact that we have to hazard, if you will, I'm choosing my words carefully, guesses, Dr. Gibbs. I mean, it's risky because we're not functioning from like one set of facts. We have a lot of, we even now have, to me, messed up the word, really the meaning of truth. People talk about my truth and your truth. No, it's my experience and your experience. Truth is neutral.
I
Truth
agree.
is or is not.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm seeing right here. I mean, why do you think, to Kaylin's point, why do you think this, the ethics committee, why do you think they are withholding this report? And mind you, if they release this report, Kaylin, I think they need to release the reports that would exonerate him as well, so that we can make, I think, an informed and an intelligent decision. I think that's what needs to happen. But certainly they owe it to the people, I think, to release the report. And the Department of Justice needs to weigh in and tell us why they chose not to prosecute him. That's just my thought. Dr. Gibbs.
Well, I agree with everything you said, Santita. The bottom line is they need to release the report, and it's not a good look nor a good reality to not release the report. The public has the right to know. And the public also has the right to know more details about why the Justice Department decided not to prosecute.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and let's be clear on this: it was a prosecution that was being considered under the Biden administration. So it wasn't as if they dropped it because they loved Donald Trump or loved Matt Gates.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think on both sides here, there's enormous suspicion of motive and to some extent, a justified suspicion of motive. I think it must be said as a general point. One of the things I think that contributed to Donald Trump's victory was the Democrats overstepping and overusing the legal system for political purposes. The fact that you had 4 indictments of Trump, the fact that you had 2 impeachment attempts, the fact that you had multiple efforts to get him off the ballot, it just seemed like the Democrats were dispensing with the whole idea of impartial justice. Were trying to use the justice system as a weapon. And that it didn't go over well with the public. It looked like an unreasonable thing to do. And in my view, it was an unreasonable thing to do, at least in some cases. And that contributed. All along, I thought the Democrats are shooting themselves in the foot. They are increasing popularity of Donald Trump. And that's exactly, I think, what happened on November 5th. I think it, and so I think that the effort to sort of use the justice system as a weapon is just a terrible idea. But the Democrats seem to be very hooked on the idea. And so,
I mean, it's not a winning strategy for Democrats.
No, it's definitely not a winning strategy. And it clearly did not win on November 5th. And so I just wonder if the Democrats will learn any lessons from that. And this time around, try and act with a little bit more, oppose Donald Trump, yes, but oppose him on solid grounds rather than just making up charge after charge after charge and seeing what sticks. And with regard to Gates, just the atmosphere of mistrust is so great, and the atmosphere of scandal mongering is just so excessive that people might just give him a pass, even if there's damaging information in the House report. That's legitimate damaging information in the House report, just because the whole idea of using the legal system of charges against people has been so discredited by overuse. It's the crying wolf problem, the little boy who cried wolf. You cry wolf too many times, then if there are real legitimate basis for criticizing Gates, if there are real legitimate things that he did wrong that are provable, people won't believe you when you show them the documents. So I think we're faced with that prospect. Bottom line is I don't think we know what's in the House report at this point. Mm-hmm. We don't fully know, I don't think, even what was in the Department of Justice investigation. Mm-hmm. But certainly whatever there is out there should be released since he's been considered for Attorney General.
Absolutely. But it's not. I mean, we are at an impasse. Is there anything, just given your understanding of history, what can the American public do?
I think what the American public is doing is they are clearly getting very fed up with the two-party system. I don't think the American system is so ossified that it can't seem to respond to the public demand for something else other than the two-party system. But clearly there's enormous cynicism about the whole process right now. Trump was not elected because people loved him or people trusted him. They did it because they thought he was not as bad in their view as the Democrats were. Mm-hmm. There was negative voting on both sides to a significant degree here. So I think what we'll probably get, I mean, I'm reluctant to say what people should do is demand greater accountability from the two parties. But clearly that hasn't been working because both the nominees weren't really that popular with the public. Kamala Harris lost the election, including the popular vote. The proof of the pudding is in the eating there. Donald Trump won, though narrowly, and people don't really like him either. And so I just wonder, are the parties very responsive to public demands? Are the parties giving the public what they want? And the answer is no. And how do you change that? I don't really, unfortunately, have a great answer for that.
Well, I'm wondering, just like you said, I mean, it's almost as if the voters don't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, to anyone. I mean, Republicans were not given a choice, but at least they had a primary. Democrats didn't have a choice and did not have a primary.
That's right.
We're fighting for democracy. I'm just a little confused. You got to help me. I'm not the historian here. You are.
Well, there was certainly a contradiction of the Democrats' message that democracy is on the ballot. And of course, the Democrats stand for democracy. The Republicans don't stand for democracy. That was the message. But this was a party that openly suppressed any challenge to Biden in the primaries. I suspect they openly threatened and intimidated people who were thinking of challenging him, mm-hmm. blacklisting them. If you dare to go against Biden, you'll be blacklisted. That was the impression I got, certainly.
Well, wait, and Dean Phillips was able to run, but Congressman Dean Phillips, is also a very wealthy guy. He's got
Well,
what people say KMA money. Let me put it gently. He can take this or leave it. And that makes a difference.
yep,
It
that's
does.
true.
It
That's
does. I
true.
mean, unfortunately, this is not this. None of this is pure. Everybody, none of it. None of it.
That's
But
true.
this, but yeah, I mean, it's the reality. If you can walk away from this, and technically anyone can, but for some people, this is the biggest come up they will ever have. And I'm not gonna. I know a lot of wonderful people who are serving in both houses, or in the state and at the state and federal level. People really run because they want to change things or they want to make things right. They really do. And I'm not saying that because I've had a couple of brothers serve. No, I've known a lot of folks. Congressman Danny Davis from here in Chicago, from the west side of Chicago, which is an area of the city that has been under resourced and they struggle and yet they fight back. He was the congressman. Being a congressman is like his second or third career. The reason people elected him, Dr. Gibbs, is because he has been a servant. He's now just being paid for what he was doing for 50 years.
Mm.
I mean, I'm glad he has benefits now. Because you could knock on his door and he was going to go fight for you. So when the seat opened up, people demanded that he run and take it. That was a demand. So my question is really, I mean, what do you think? What would a Department of Justice look like with a Matt Gaetz? And I'm asking that because most Americans don't trust these institutions. And the Department of Justice, please, they investigated Dr. King to death, literally,
Yeah.
and Malcolm X to death, literally. White progressives, peace activists to death. That's who they pursue. They don't pursue oligarchs. They left Wall Street alone after they bankrupted the country. America's functioning in the negative, Dr. Gibbs. We are
Yeah.
financially, we are, and they leave them alone. So I mean, and but like you said, he's like a mixed. He's got a mixed record.
Yep.
He does some things. He's from the far right wing of the party, but you know what? He does some things that make me go, you know what? I agree with that.
I agree. Yes. Yes.
And you guys, I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm not going to apologize for that. If you do something, there's an old expression, Dr. Gibbs, in the Black community: wrong is wrong if your mama does it. Right is right if it's in the trash can. Okay. And if you do something that is right, I applaud that. I respect that. While looking at you and going, well, your worldview, we don't share it, and there's that. And I'm just wondering, with someone who is a disruptor, what would he be disrupting if he becomes the United States Attorney General?
Well, it must be said on the negative side, my guess is that he would downplay things like civil rights enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real, for me, that would be a deal breaker in terms of supporting him. He would, on the positive side, he is actually pretty good on things like antitrust policy, which I think would help ordinary people. He's also good on opposing efforts to censor the internet, which has been a major push by the Democrats in the last 4 years. And I do not approve of that. There is, like Trump, he's a mishmash of all sorts of things. And some of them are good. Some of them are not good.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
But wait a minute. Shouldn't
yeah.
we remember that Trump wanted to run for president in 2000, not as a Republican, not as a Democrat, but under Ross Perot's banner?
Right.
Which he opposed NAFTA. His big mess up for me was when he went to the NAACP, and as an old white man from Texas, he talked about you people. And honestly, I got it. Okay, the thing is, don't treat me like the N-word. This is someone that's not what he was doing. I mean, it's like, look, generationally, you guys, stop. Ugh.
Yeah.
And so Trump has never been this tradition. He's always been more of a disruptor. And if you listen to his public comments now through the years, and I've had to started investigating for myself because, I mean, look, Joe and Mika went down to Mar-a-Lago because Comcast is about to sell MSNBC.
Mm.
And the executives told them, make nice with
Mm.
Trump. You all been calling him Hitler. You've been calling him a racist. Now, because now NBC's ratings have taken a hit. So now NBC is saying we got to decouple. We're going to have to let MSNBC go. They're looking at firing people right now, Dr. Gibbs.
Yeah.
They're,
Well, another problem, I mean, clearly another issue, I mean, separate from Gates, is the issue that we've discussed this on the air before, the fact that the media has become too partisan. And we already have a Democratic National Committee. We don't have to replicate that at the level of the media. But MSNBC and CNN especially, and to some extent the New York Times and the Washington Post, have become too overtly partisan and just negative on the Republicans, positive on the Democrats. It gets very tiring and boring to read that sort of thing. And I think now they're realizing that it's not good for their business model. And so they're trying to reverse gear here. But I think there always was a problem. I guess myself as an academic, I feel like, as a professor, I feel like if I have any public function, it's to try and cast some light on things for the public, to help the public to understand complex issues. I think if I just get up and start praising the Democrats uncritically and criticizing the Republicans, then I have no function, because we already have a Democratic Party to do that. The press has been doing that since Trump came down on the escalator in 2015. And they've been doing it ever since. And I think it's a real public disservice for them to take that kind of extreme partisanship. But that's obviously another story for Matt Gaetz. That's another problem that we're facing here. I think with Matt Gaetz, what you are facing is there is a certain tone of populism to the Republican Party. Mostly, I think it's fake. In the sense that both parties are representing different factions of the plutocratic class. Let's not forget, Elon Musk is I believe, the richest or one of the richest people on the planet Earth. And there certainly are other billionaires who are standing very openly behind Donald Trump, as there are with the Democrats. I think more.
Wait, Elon Musk has moved into Mar-a-Lago. Didn't Trump muse aloud? Is he ever going to leave? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
He's fused. They're fused at the hip virtually at this point. And so I think that there are some real limits, very serious limits, to whatever populism there may be in the Republican Party. But there are some touches here and there that do seem to have some validity in that. I think that Matt Gaetz does have a pretty good record on antitrust. And so I have to give him that.
When you say antitrust, explain that.
Well, the idea basically that we have a lot of monopoly power. Most of the prices you get in the store are not decided by free competition. They're basically dictated by the fact that there are only a small number of corporations in any particular sector, and they can fix prices at a high level and maximize profits and get excessive profits by doing that. Now, we have antitrust laws in this country. Mostly they've been unenforced since 1970. After around 1970, the doctrines of Milton Friedman, which were very friendly to big business and very hostile to the idea of antitrust, became the dominant views. Now, people like Matt Gaetz have pushed back against that. And to the extent that he has done that, I think he has done that with some degree of sincerity. I have to say, I agree with that.
I do too, but I don't think you should have to apologize for it. I'm not apologizing for it. But that just because you and I agree on that that's neither here nor there. I think, we need to step back and really take people and their politics case by case.
Yes.
Because I think that we've got to make some decisions that are much wiser than the ones we're making now, because we have become so partisan that we don't even know what the parties stand for. We just reflexively are Democratic or reflexively Republican or are reflexively disavowing both parties. I mean, if you want to build a third party, which is really a second party, what do you want to build? I mean, you got to be very careful and very intentional. We have to be very careful and intentional in our politics. So, are you recommending that we examine his record and but I mean, and including on civil rights, because that concerns me greatly.
Yes.
But I also know that antitrust the monopolies in American society and in American and global business. That's part of the migrant crisis, everybody. That's driving it. In the next hour, we're going to be talking about this tent program, which is, I mean, there are some workers in Arkansas who are suing Tyson's Foods because they're saying you're only hiring migrants, and they're being brought here. Hilton has a hope program, if you will, Dr. Gibbs, hope for hospitality, where they're hiring migrants. That's what they're doing, and now that they have places in Texas, instead of shipping them all over Texas. Oh, no, 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 no. They need these farm workers, y'all. And we have to be clear on the game here. And that's why I think understanding people's records, Dr. Gibbs, is so important. Because in all of this back and forth, the discussion about what he may or may not have done with someone or someones who were underage, um, uh, which is disturbing. But what's disturbing is what really happens in power, everybody. And I'm going to keep it 100 with you, because in power there's a lot of mischief. Thus, the Page program in the U.S. House of Representatives has been ended. I mean, Dr. Gibbs, I wanted to be a page. I used to read my Encyclopedia Britannica, and I've got Harlequin romances too. And I was very literal, and I just believed in this rosy view of the world, even as I was raised in the civil rights movement and understood what, the great mechanisms of power could do to people, right? But Dr. Gibbs, my parents were like 10 toes down, absolutely not. Then one morning they called me into their bedroom. I must have been a junior in high school. And two of the most prominent congressmen, Congressman Crane from Illinois and Congressman Studs from Massachusetts, had sexual relationships with their interns.
I remember that.
You remember that? And I remember they had the young black fellow who had been involved with Congressman Studs.
Yeah.
And I saw him on the Today Show. My parents wanted, not only did they want me to watch the interview, but they wanted to watch it with me. And I remember my sister was playing in the bed. She was a toddler at the time. And my father was, I remember him fastening his belt. I don't know why I remember that. And my mother was sitting on the edge of the bed. And after it was over, because my father would leave it to my mother to start these heavy conversations, she said, "That is why your father and I would not let you go to Washington." She said, "I was not going to have you running around, getting coffee, getting water for these people. I didn't want them to think that you were needy because you got a daddy, you got a mom, and you don't need this." Mm.
Mm.
And she said, "That boy," and my father, before she could finish, my father looked and said, "That boy's been broken." He said, "He'll never be the same. He'll never be right." And you could see he was very emotional and very fragile. And there's just so much mischief in all of this. But we're not examining his record. We're caught up in the sex, quite frankly.
Yeah.
The alleged sexual activities. We're talking about P. Diddy, but no one wants to talk about that of Abercrombie and Fitch, who with his partner and an employee brought straight and gay boys in, gave them drugs so that they would have relations with them. And they lured them so that they could become models. If you think P. Diddy is awful, if you read this case, it's horrible. But P. Diddy had freak offs and he had sexual events. Come on.
I think that I'll speak more specifically about Trump, because with Trump, we do know some things that are disturbing about his past with regard to, shall we say, sexual matters. Honestly, the most disturbing thing he did, in my view, was barging in on 15-year-old girls changing their clothes for a beauty pageant. And that's disturbing to me, because these are basically children, and you shouldn't do that. But I can still understand, and I have to be honest here, why people would nevertheless vote for him, even though he's done that. And I'm sure there are a lot of people, particularly women, also men, who are disturbed by that, who voted for him anyway. And I can tell you why I can understand that. In 1980, I voted for Edward Kennedy for president because I thought he was going to be a better president than either Jimmy Carter or Ronald Reagan. And in retrospect, I still think he would have been a better president on the issues. But he did not come clean on the Chappaquiddick incident, the death of a young woman. And clearly, he did something illegal there that was covered up, and I knew that at the time. But I decided I'm not voting for somebody to be morally pure. I'm voting for somebody to be a better president. And I put aside my reservations about the Chappaquiddick incident, and I voted for him anyway, despite my reservations. So I can understand why people would vote for Donald Trump in spite of all that we know about him, and at least some of what we know about him is, I think, proven sufficiently that we can say it's disturbing. But others would say that they put that aside and voted for him on what they considered the issues. So I can understand that logic in terms of why people would do that, and why people would put that aside. I don't know. How do you feel about what I just said, Santita?
Well, I understand how people disaggregate.
That's right. That's
You know,
right.
and because we all do. You make compromises. You say, well, you know what, I don't like this, but I like that, so I'm going to give this. I'm going to give that greater weight, and I just have to hold my breath and just keep on going. I get that, but I also get, like Chappaquiddick. There's so many outstanding questions, and then even I've heard different stories about that.
Yeah.
And I'm very clear. The Kennedys are so enmeshed in. They've had family members killed, and the government has been implicated in that. So they're so deeply, they're so deeply enmeshed in the establishment. I kind of have to step back and say, I don't know what this is about. See, some things I'm very clear. As you were saying on one of my shows some time ago, you said, look, I've looked at the FOIA documents, excuse me. I've seen what we do.
Yeah, that's right.
And anytime then President Trump would tell Judge Napolitano, who said, I wanted you to share. Hey, Effie Ross, sending you so much love, and Bernadette and Reg and Mike, and Kaylin and Andre and Louis. There's some things that are just above my pay grade, and there are things. That's why when I look at Robert Kennedy, I'm like, you all act like this is an average guy. As a child, he heard his father call the CIA and the FBI and say, "Did you kill my brother? I want to know." He's not your average guy. He knows things we cannot. He's not going to look at power. He understands power in a way that most of us can only imagine. He's seen things.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just the reality. And and when you get to that level, that was one of the things that when I saw Kamala Harris, as she changed on issues, I'm like, all you have to do is say, there were some things that I thought and knew and believed before I got here. Now that I have been vice president, I've been in the room, I've met the corporate leaders, I look at the jobs, I look at this and that, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but you lay out the case and just say, you know what, I had to change my mind because it's more than what I believe. There are if I dislodge this, I'm dislodging, say, 50,000 jobs. So maybe we need to find a gentler way of doing this. I don't know. I'm just saying at some point, people are not as unmindful and unknowledgeable as we think. And I think folks can handle at least some aspects of the truth. And so that's why I'm like, release, but don't just release that report, Dr. Gibbs. Release the reports that might incriminate him, but release the reports that would exonerate him. Because there's a reason that the Department of Justice did not. And it might not be clean, but I need to see. They could have cleaned up the reports for all we know. I don't know.
No, I agree that obviously, I think the key factor here is the public's right to know, since we're talking about the Attorney General of the United States, which is, let's face it, a big deal. And the public has the right to know as much information as possible. Withholding any significant information about him from the Justice Department or from the House Ethics Committee is just not acceptable at this point in time.
Before you go, what do you want? I mean, what do you want to say? What do you want us to know?
Well, I think that the Trump nominees, what we're looking at, a lot of them are really bad. There are a couple of them that are actually not so bad. Matt Gaetz is a mixed bag. He's not, on balance, I don't particularly like him, but he has some good points. And I think we need to set aside our partisan blinders and look at this a little bit more objectively. And I think a lot of people who did not vote for Donald Trump, if they look carefully at Gates, they'll see there are at least some positives, there, and that they shouldn't rush to judgment too quickly on a partisan basis and say that because he's been accused of criminal acts, he's necessarily guilty of criminal acts. We should be open at least to the possibility that these accusations have been motivated by politics more than substance. I'm not saying that's true, but it's at least it certainly is a possibility that we need to be open to. I should add another candidate, I think, for high office that I think is more positive in my view. Tulsi Gabbard actually has,
Why?
on the whole, I think, has a pretty good record. I mean, not in everything. In the Middle East, she's terrible, but she's been very critical of the intelligence services, and I can think of she's one of the better people I can think of who should head the intelligence services because she doesn't like them, they don't like her, and I think that's a good thing.
Me too.
Somebody would hold them to account, who would not just be in bed with them and indulge their penchant for secrecy and skullduggery in dark rooms, which is what they've done for decades. And I think that's one of the reasons you're getting these attacks against her on completely insubstantial, and I have to say, defamatory grounds, without any basis whatsoever, claiming she's a Russian agent. That's a complete reversion to McCarthyism and the sort of thing J. Edgar Hoover would do back in the day. And now the Democrats are doing that. It speaks badly of the Democrats. So I think we need to, again, just view the situation as objectively as possible and not just say, because Trump is doing it, it's automatically bad. I think that's a mistake.
I think so too. And I think that we've got to be very, very careful and intentional and understand, because I think a lot of the conversations that the corporate media are throwing our way, Dr. Gibbs, are diversionary because we're not examining people's records.
That's right. I agree. That is a problem. And so we need to look much more at the substance. Unfortunately, Santita, I do have to go and grade some exams.
Thank you.
Turn them back today. But have a nice morning. Thank you very much. Now, by the way, I'll get a new microphone. I'll get a new video camera so I can do the video next time. Okay. All right. Bye now.
You'll hear from me. Thank you so much. Sending you so much love today.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, look at Chaparral. She's got a new photo. I'm not mad at you. Chaparral, how you doing this morning?
Santita, I'm doing well, taking these kids to school. But I've been listening to your conversation with Dr. Gibbs, and I must say, one of the things that bothers me the most about this particular selection of Matt Gaetz and even Trump's entire cabinet is the hypocrisy. What we're seeing right now is everybody being above the law. And so it starts with the head, which is Trump. They are basically saying they're going to wash. I don't even care about if the allegations are true or not about Trump. The reality is he is a convicted criminal. Now they're talking about possibly staying the conviction. They're talking about throwing it away, totally exonerating him. And my anger is because Gaetz, he has been accused of having sex with a minor and having all these drugs, all of this stuff. No other American could have these type of records or accusations and then be put forth to head top committees, top departments, being president of the United States. So why is this right for these people?
Well, you know what?
A lot of anger about that.
But let me tell you, I think the only pushback I would give you is that we've had so many people of questionable character and ethics and people who've broken the law who have functioned at the highest levels of power. One need only look at, we can look at our presidents because their acts are protected. That having been said, let's look at J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover was a criminal. He was a criminal. He stayed at the racetrack. Only heaven knows. And they said he ran up debts. And because he was homosexual in a time when it was not accepted, he was someone who dressed as a woman when that was absolutely unacceptable. The mafia had all of his secrets. And they let they were holding each other hostage, if you will. I mean, I think one of the things that we're seeing now, Chaparral, is that sadly, now the quiet part's being said out loud. This is how this has been working all along. I just think that we were not in on the joke.
And I agree, Santita. I believe that this is the way, like you say, Washington is corrupt.
No, no, no,
We
no,
know
no, no, not just Washington. When you look at power,
politics,
that
politics and
not
power.
politics, power. You see it in the church, wherever
Hmm.
you see it on your job, wherever there is power. You've got to, if the Lord, good Lord, gives you the opportunity to be at the top of the power pyramid or near it, ask God to help you to be a good person.
Yes.
Because because power, and this is not for black, this is for red, yellow, black, brown, and white people, straight, gay, trans, I don't care what you are, who you are, as a human being, power will corrupt you. Absolute power will corrupt absolutely. Or should I say
Yes.
it can. If you are
Yes.
not wedded to God, you got a problem.
Now that I agree.
You know,
That
and I
I
think
agree.
we're seeing that now. I mean, I think the danger for me, Chaparral, is that we're making it partisan. As if, this whole thing about Russian disinformation, we see how different people, Republicans and Democrats, they've been shielded. They shield each other. They do it in Congress. I remember when my brother was under investigation. Several people, a couple of people who were friends said, you know what? They want to jam him on this. There's someone else who's being shielded who millions of dollars are missing. Should we talk about it? My mother said no. If they want to take him out, they're going to do that, and we don't need to smear anybody. And we're going if this is where we need to exit, this is where we're going to exit. That's it. That's it. But I mean, so I'm saying, everybody, this is how the game is played, Chaparral. This is it. And I mean, it's not a Republican thing. It's not a Democratic thing. My soror Marion, who made us send these ballots back to Chicago when we were pledging in 1983. I love you. That's how she pledged us. You better vote. Are you registered to vote? I love you, Marion. I love you, soror. I love you. Um, I mean, I'm just saying, it's like the dirty part is being said out loud about everything. I mean, Chaparro, I know this kind of take going a little bit off over here. Everyone talks about P. Diddy. No one talks about the gentleman from Abercrombie and Fitch. Let me look up his name right now. Keep the talk. Because, I mean, they talk about he had sex events. P. Diddy has freak offs. Hello? And what he did was horrifying. Horrifying. I mean, I'm not saying, leave P. Diddy alone because he's a black guy or anything, but this guy, we're not even hearing about Abercrombie and Fitch. Not
That
hearing
that
about.
is very true, and he is protected. He is protected as well. And my thing is that even I believe now that Trump is back in office, PD will be out by January 22nd.
Wait a minute, he is not. Wait a minute, he's not been touched under a Democratic administration. Wait a minute. Authorities arrested, according to this report, from the BBC, former fashion executive Mike Jeffries, his partner Matthew Smith, and the couple's alleged middleman James Jacobson. Federal prosecutors said the men used force, fraud, and coercion to engage in violent and exploitive sexual acts. Mr. Jeffries, everybody, it's Mike Jeffries, and his partner, Matthew Smith, have previously denied any wrongdoing via their lawyers, but they were accused of plying these boys and men, young men who wanted to model and who wanted to way up, right, and out, plying them with drugs to knock them out and plying them with muscle relaxants, so that even if they did not want to perform these intimate acts, they would be relaxed so that they wouldn't be able to give in. They would not be able to resist. No one's talking about that.
I mean, it's very true, Santita. And the thing is that we always know that there is also, this color barrier. They're going to always ostracize black men, just like R. Kelly, they have banned him. Just go back to Bill Cosby, how they've taken the Cosby Show off of the air. You
The
know,
most
one of the
popular
most
show
popular
in history.
shows. Yeah,
The most popular show in the history of American television. Y'all want to make Friends popular? No, that's why I don't even watch it, because it makes me angry when I see that. In a different world? Oh,
hmm
come on. No, 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 no,
and
no,
so we see that, and I always say that black men cannot do what white men do,
no.
and
Wait a
it's
minute.
not fair. It's not fair.
No, nor should they.
Nor
Why?
should they. Yeah,
You
because
wait a
these
minute.
are corrupt acts.
You push back against corruption, and
Yeah,
when you get here, you want to be corrupt. No, you can't do that. Now, I don't want to be like the people I'm criticizing.
right.
And somehow or another, that's why you have to watch being critical of folks, because you end up becoming what you criticize.
Yes, very true.
Oh, that's why I'm saying, wait a minute, judge not, lest ye be judged. Hold it.
Well,
Wait,
did they throw that first stone?
come on. And you can't do it. And all the rocks dropped. Who wanted to sleep with who slept with the woman? Who
Right.
wanted to sleep with the woman? Who thought about it? All right. I see no rocks, my friends, are being thrown. So you know what? Now, young lady, go and send no more, and y'all, you too. Because all y'all in it. Okay? So I mean, that's why I'm looking at Matt Gaetz. Well, we'll look, because everyone gets, when it's an intimate act, we go, oh my goodness, look at this. And no one's looking at his record. And no one's really challenging Congress on the people they prosecute, who they persecute, and the people they protect. And all that's very real, Chaparral. Let me give you the last word before we go into the next hour, where we're going to be talking about migration.
Yeah. Santita, my final thoughts is that I think that the public does need to know all the ins and outs. And it goes for both sides, whether it's Democratic or Republican. If they are corrupt, we need to know. We need to have access to that information. I don't believe in hiding it. And like this ethics committee that is holding this, they said it's bipartisan or whatever. The reality is that nobody should be protected, including the president of the United States. I feel that Judge Marchand should sentence him as if he was not the president, because that's what he would do with every other American. And wherever the chips fall, let them fall. For Gates, for Trump, for anybody else. It's another one of his cabinet members who has some sexual allegations too. I forgot his name, but I think he's going to be on defense or something. But whoever has these issues, we should definitely know before these people are confirmed. And I don't believe in confirming them through recess appointments. We should go through the process, and they should all be vetted and confirmed in front of the public, because that's the way we need it to be.
I agree, but you know what? I want them to go on and do it. I'm going to tell you why. Because the quiet part is being said out loud. This is what these folks have been doing, Chaparral Wells. Now we're seeing it. Now we're seeing it. Now it's before you, everybody. This is our country. And this is how it works. This is how the sausage is made. So the question is now, what are we going to do? In the next hour, let's talk about, and everybody switch over to the next link. Who is an American? Who should immigrate here? What is the 14th Amendment about, which gave Black people birthright citizenship? Because remember, up until the 14th Amendment, Black folks were not citizens of the United States. We've been here since the founding. We founded the country. The country was not built by immigrants. It was built by Black people. Folks can get mad with me if they want to. Immigrants came here and they were able to get jobs because Black people were the builders. We built the White House. We built the Capitol. We built all those buildings. Not for free. We were not paid in Washington, D.C. And a Black man planned it, Benjamin Banneker. He was the architect of Washington, D.C. So let's look at all of this. What does all of this mean? And what are all this land? I mean, now Governor Abbott wants to settle the illegal migrants into Texas for what? So they can go to work? Is that what it is? Like they do with all other prisoners? Oops. Yeah, let's talk about it, everybody. Hey, Laura. Hey, everybody. Switch on over to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show. You'll join us too. I know you got a lot to say, Chaparral. And you do too, everybody. Back in just a moment. Santita Jackson, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.